And as a friendly reminder, you can find all of our webinars, including this one, on our YouTube channel. So we've been posting everything to there. So if you're not able to stay for the entire session or want to go back and watch the session, they're all on our YouTube channel. Okay, with that, I am going to share our screen. Actually, first, should we do introductions?
Yeah, I always forget
I
because
do
I know
too.
I feel like everyone knows us. So if you don't, I apologize, but I feel like I know you. In the audience, I definitely know Elizabeth. Yeah, so I'm Alyssa again. I hope that I have seen all of you in the audience at least one other time, if not more, because we do love when you come to these webinars. I'm the Director of International Recruitment and Communication. And yeah, we are getting so close to orientation. I'm getting super pumped.
And I'm Elizabeth Lorenz. I'm the Assistant Director of International Recruitment and Enrollment, and I work very closely with Alyssa and our amazing international team at Minnesota State University. And we are preparing for orientation in August. Like Alyssa said, it will be here before we know it. So we're excited to have these pre-arrival sessions that are hopefully helping you prepare for your enrollment at MSU.
Yes. And as we're pulling up that presentation, I just want to let you all know that you are in very good hands with Elizabeth and me. Together, we have almost 20 years of experience in this field. Both Elizabeth and I have visited embassies, talked to visa counselors. So, a lot of what we're going to talk through today is not only our advice, but what we've heard directly from different embassy officials. So, I'm hopeful that this will be helpful, like I said. But
And
that
I know many students have questions and personal circumstances and stories that they might want to ask questions about. So at the end of the presentation, we will have some time for question and answer. So throughout the session, be paying attention because we may end up answering your question during the presentation. But if we do not answer your question, feel free to type that into the chat box and we will do our best to answer those. We do have a lot of content to cover throughout the presentation, so we probably will not be answering questions in the middle of it, but we'll save those for the end. We also want to recognize that this session is specific for students who have probably been denied a visa, and we understand that there's a lot of emotions around receiving a visa refusal and rejection. And so we understand the dilemma you're facing, and you're just wanting to understand more information to hopefully overcome that refusal the next time around. So we want to be sensitive with this topic and respectful for each of you as you're processing through what you went through with your visa refusal.
Yes, each one of you has had your own experience. And so please know that we are speaking in generalities right now. And even if we share a student story that we have, many stories are very, very similar. So please never feel like we're actually using any one specific story. We're probably summarizing multiple experiences when we're speaking through today. And also, we want you to know that sometimes you can do everything like correct. I'm in air quotes right now. You can do everything correctly. You can be an amazing candidate, and sometimes things just don't work out with your visa for, reasons that are beyond your control. So we're going to help you as much as we can today, but we can never guarantee that this advice will actually get you the visa. It's really just to give you more strategies. Um, so, with that,
So, with that, we will be talking through a few different topics, such as important terms that we think it's helpful for students to understand for the context of their visa. thinking through what the role of the visa officer is and how that can help you strategize for your next visa interview, and then also some helpful resources. So we'll get started and jump right in, looking at a few important terms as a visa applicant. So the first term we want to highlight is an immigrant visa. And this is important to distinguish because this is for individuals who are planning to come get a visa to stay in the US for an indefinite amount of time. So those would typically be student or people who have work visas or are on the pathway to permanent residency to stay in the United States and obtain a green card. That is very different than a non-immigrant visa type. This is all other visa categories that are temporary visas that have limited terms and end dates when that individual needs to depart the United States. So all student visas, whether that's an F1 visa or J1 visa, they fall in this non-immigrant or NIV category. So the reason we emphasize that is pointing out that that's the lens that visa officers are viewing your visa application through, that you are going to come to the United States for a temporary amount of time and you need to return to your home country when your visa terms are finished. So that F1 student visa that you would be applying for is that non-immigrant visa type. You have a specific purpose, which is to study in the United States, and that is for a specific amount of time, which would be the duration of your program and completion of any additional benefits you might have as part of that program, such as OPT. But when you're finished with that term of study, you would need to leave the United States. So we're just setting the context with those important terms so that you understand a little bit more about the significance of that F1 student visa.
Yeah, those terms are going to be ones that we refer to throughout the presentation as well. So understanding the immigrant versus non-immigrant visa is so important, as Elizabeth has said, and that's why we're starting this whole presentation that way. Moving forward, if you have gone to your visa appointment and you have been refused your F1 visa, some of the most common reasons are the ones we're going to talk about. So the first reason that we hear all the time is 214B of the Immigrant and Nationality Act. And so what does 214B, what does that mean? So this is the intent to immigrate, or remain in the USA. So this is a very common misuse of a non-immigrant visa. And so if you get the denial reason 214B, it's because they do not think that you have the intent to actually return home. They think you will likely remain in the US. So with this, we have to remember that applicants applying for an F1 visa are presumed to be intending immigrants until they can prove their non-immigrant intent. So that means, I love the way that Elizabeth has put this in here. So essentially, applicants that go for their F1 visa are guilty until proven innocent. So in the US, we always say in our justice system, you're innocent until proven guilty. But unfortunately, in this case, when you are going to apply for a visa, you are actually guilty in the visa officer's mind of being an immigrant until you prove to them that you have every intent of returning home and not immigrating to the US. Okay, so if you get 214B, they're not telling you what is the intention that you're giving off, but they're saying at some point they felt that you were going to maybe misuse the visa. I also want to just say here, 214B is a catch-all. Yes, technically this is, you're being denied because of your intent to maybe immigrate to the US. But sometimes they give you this reason, even if it's maybe something that you don't quite understand. Maybe they found something in your DS 160, maybe something in the background check. Um, so, there could be other reasons they're giving this as well. The other thing we see a lot is 221G of the Immigration and Nationality Act. So 221G is administrative processing. So that means if you went to your appointment and you did not fully complete the visa application and or provide all required supporting documentation, they're not able to actually give you a decision on that day. They don't know the whole story, and so they cannot give you a full answer. So usually with a 221G, it does require that the applicant should submit any requested documentation. So this could be maybe you brought the wrong I-20 with you, maybe it had the wrong start date on it, and they said in the system we have an August 19th start date on your I-20, but the one you're presenting me with today has a January 2nd, 2024 start date. Maybe you didn't remember to defer your I-20, or maybe you just, forgot to print it out and grabbed the old one by mistake. They would ask you to submit the new correct one. One thing I want to say about 221G, it's not always bad. Sometimes they put you in 221G because they see the potential, they see that you have the correct intentions. They just need that full story to actually approve the visa. So please note 221G, not always a bad thing, not a guaranteed good thing. 214B though, that's going to be guaranteed denial.
All right. So we wanted to also look at the role of the visa officer, just so you understand, again, the context that they are trained to view visa applicants through. So they're viewing any visa applicant through a certain lens, and visa officers are trained to look for specific things for all visa applicants, but especially for non-immigrant visa applicants. So, as we've emphasized, visa officers are trained to assume that you have intent to stay in the United States until you prove to them otherwise. So, that ties into that example we gave of you are guilty until proven innocent. Visa officers are also trained to assume that you have intention to violate the terms of your visa or misuse your visa for other purposes. So that might mean where you are coming to stay in the US and get a full-time job and not actually go to the university that you've been accepted to. Every year, there's a list of students that are called no-shows, and this happens at all universities across the US, where a student enters the United States with a student visa, but they never enroll at that institution. And that is a misuse of the visa because they entered the US and did not follow through with the intention of that visa. And they've just disappeared. And, maybe they're driving for Uber somewhere. Who knows? But that is what visa officers are trained to prevent. So if they have any sense that a student is going to misuse that visa and be in the United States for a purpose other than studying or stay beyond the terms of their visa, that is a basis for denial. They are also trained to look for any red flags about your intentions to study in the United States. So maybe if they see inconsistencies between your DS 160 visa application and information that you are telling them the day of your visa interview, that is a red flag where they're seeing inconsistent information and could deny you a visa on that basis. So this would also include insufficient finances to pay for your education. So maybe you've presented a bank document from a financial sponsor, but the visa officer isn't convinced that this person or this source of funding is able to fully pay for your education in the United States, that could constitute as a red flag. If you mention anything that you plan to get a job in the United States after your education and work for a Fortune 500 company, maybe you want to work for Microsoft and go to Silicon Valley, that's great, but don't tell that to the visa officer because that's showing that you have intention to stay in the US beyond your program of study to work in the United States. And at the time you are applying for the visa, your intention should only be to study and return home. So anything that you say in that interview, that could be a red flag that triggers the visa officer to deny you. Another red flag could be that you have no clear reason or understanding of why you are studying in the United States rather than your home country or maybe a different country. So you want to know, why is the US the best fit for you? Why did you choose to study in the United States rather than stay and go to university in your home country? And then also, if you have no clear ties to your home country, such as maybe all of your family or a lot of your family lives in the United States or lives abroad somewhere else, that could be insufficient ties to your home country where the visa officer might think you are intending to just enter the United States to go join members of your family rather than returning home to be with your family or your friends. We'll talk more in depth about that ties to your home country throughout this presentation, but that could also be a red flag. If you are not giving any clear plan for your future career or how you will use your education for your future career, that can also be a red flag that you might not have done your research about your program and what you can do with that major. And then, of course, any fraudulent documents are absolute red flags for the visa officer and will almost always lead to a visa denial. So if you are going to your visa interview with a fraudulent passport, bank documents, academic transcripts, test scores, anything that is not legitimate, that would be a basis for denial. Also, if you are misrepresenting yourself and lying on your DS-160, or like I said earlier, lying in the visa interview and the information you're telling the visa officer does not align with the information on your DS-160, that would also be a red flag and basis for denial. So all of those are things that you want to be thinking about so that you understand what visa officers are trained to look for. And ultimately, the role of the visa officer is to be frontline security for the United States national interest. So that may sound really harsh, but truly it's political. So this is the front that visa officers are trained to maintain, because ultimately it's for United States security. They want to make sure that the people getting the visas have legitimate intentions when they're traveling to the United States.
Yeah. I just want to talk a little bit about fraudulent documents even more. Um, Elizabeth covered everything really well, but I just want to say even more because I think um, coming from other places in the world, I think sometimes fraudulent documentation is thought of as no big deal. It's something that everybody does. And as long as you don't get caught, it's fine. But truly, fraudulent documentation of any sort, whether it be your I-20 and you've just gone in and used Photoshop to change a date, or if you have doctored your financial documents so that it looks like you have more money than you really do, or if you have presented receipts for a DS-160 or SEVIS I-901 fee payment that is not real. These are actually very serious things, and the embassy does not take these lightly. Our office does not take them lightly. And when we see fraudulent documentation, because we do fairly often, we will not issue an I-20 to you now or ever in the future. because that is our reputation at stake. This is the same with the embassy. They are not, if they see that you have provided fraudulent documentation, whether or not they have actually said to you that they have caught it, you will not get a visa now or in the future. So, fraudulent documentation is serious. They're not necessarily going to tell you that they caught it, um, but they will. We catch it regularly in our office, and we don't even have the resources they do. So please know this is very serious. This is why we make sure that we have very strict standards in our office for your financial documents, for your academic documents. It's because it is a very serious thing, and it is technically a crime. So sorry, Elizabeth. I know I got on my
Oh,
box, but we
that
have
was
seen,
perfect.
yeah, we have seen more and more of this. And if we've seen it, it means the embassies are seeing it. And, even if you're not doing this, you are being scrutinized because it is so common. So, I do see we have a hand raised. We are going to wait until the end to go through questions, though. So, just to let you all know. All right. So, you've gone to your appointment. You've maybe been denied. What do we do now? So now we reflect on what actually happened. Okay. So you're going to start thinking about what are the actual things that happened. So write down the questions and your answers that you remember. So, what did the visa officer ask? All right. Not what you think he was asking or she was asking for, because I hear that a lot. Well, they asked this, and so I told them this. And I said, well, that's not actually what they asked you. So we need to think, what did they actually ask? What were the exact words? And then what did you say in response? And right now, we need to just reflect on our answers. So when we reflect, it shouldn't be well, I should have said this, or if I had said this, maybe it would be different. We're just reflecting. What did you actually say? Okay. The next question is, why do you think you were refused? Okay. So sometimes you can ask, why was I refused? And sometimes they will actually tell you, you were refused because you have insufficient funding, and we don't think that you are really showing us your true financial ability. Most of the time, unfortunately, we're not that lucky, and you get a piece of paper that says 214B, right? So then it's kind of left to, well, what do you think you were maybe refused for? The one thing to remember about this is you are speculating. And we can speculate all we want and find different reasons. But unfortunately, if we're just speculating, we actually don't know the true reason. So if we start to think, though, then we can say, they asked me this question. I answered this way. And maybe that was telling them something that I didn't quite realize at the time. So we can our office could maybe help walk you through that. Our visa prep students could also help you walk through it. But as Elizabeth said, this is a very emotional time. And as hard as it is to remove emotion from this process to reflect, it's really important that you think about, okay, what really happened? So, like looking at facts, this is what was said, this is how I answered. Because as soon as we start to say, like, well, the visa officer didn't like me, or the visa officer didn't listen to me, or they didn't let me give the answer, like, okay, yes, that's probably all very true, but that's not helping us understand what happened and when the decision was made to deny your visa. So that's why we're saying, like, let's just look at what you said, what was said, not what you thought was said or you should have said. So I don't know, Elizabeth, do you have anything to add into that?
I think too, we hear all the time where visa officers will get a reputation. And I hear this from students who will say, oh, the woman who's in the far right visa window, she
Yeah.
always denies students, or the man who's in the middle, like, don't go to him. um,
Hmm.
and the truth is, it's not necessarily accurate that, like, there might be a visa officer who scrutinizes students a little bit more and maybe they deny students more, but they do also approve visas. Oftentimes students are denied because there is some type of red flag in their application and the visa officer is doing what they're trained to do, not because they have a personal a thing to gain from this. They're not out to get you. They're truly out to protect United States national interests through the front line of being a visa officer. And so, for whatever reason, they found an inconsistency, and that's the basis for denial. So, don't necessarily rely on what other people tell you that, like, certain visa officers have this type of reputation. What we're told is they are supposed to have consistent training across the board of how to review student applications and make decisions. So they're doing that in very short amount of time with a lot of pressure. So keep that in mind that they're under very significant time constraints to get through many visa applicants each day, and they're making significant decisions under a lot of pressure. So it can come across harsh, I think, sometimes um, for students, and it feels very cold and impersonal. So now that you've had that experience initially going through a visa interview process, hopefully you have a better understanding of what to expect the next time. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's really,
No.
yeah,
Yeah.
all very good because we all know this has such, it's a very high stakes interview. And so we understand, and we understand when you're upset because it's not approved. But unfortunately, we still have to say, well, let's look at this objectively. So,
Yeah. So, you're probably in this session because you're planning to go for another visa interview if you have been denied. So, we wanted to talk through a couple strategies for your next visa interview. And when you are filling out that DS 160 and when you go for your interview, you likely will need to answer at some point what has changed since your last visa application and visa interview. So you need to be able to present evidence of significant changes in circumstances since that last visa application. So significant changes do not necessarily mean going out and changing your major and the program you want to study. So keep in mind, you likely were not denied because of the major that you chose, but maybe you didn't understand, you didn't give a good reason of why you are studying that program and what you plan to do with it. So rather than changing your program, if that's really what you want to study, think more about what you hope to do with that major. How is it going to give you a future job in that industry? So that's just one example. So changing your major is not going to be a significant change in circumstances. We hear from students all the time that are like, okay, I'm going to put computer science, but when I get to Minnesota State, I'm going to change to nursing because I don't think they're going to give me a visa for nursing. That is not necessarily the case. You just have to be able to clarify why you want to study that program. So that's just one example. Another significant change from your last application, we get a lot of requests from students to change their financial sponsor. Changing your financial sponsor typically does not constitute as a significant change either, unless there is some external reason as to why they can no longer be your financial sponsor. So if that person, maybe lost their job in between the time they provided the bank statement to when you're going for your visa interview, that would obviously be a reason to change your sponsor. But it's likely not the sponsor that they had issues with, but how you were able to explain how that sponsor is able to financially sponsor you. To how do they have this money to contribute to your education? So think through what the visa officer asked, what you said in your previous interview, and how you would change your answers and your responses based on what you know now. When you're thinking through and reflecting on for your next visa interview, you want to recognize your highlights. So, what areas of your visa application are you really strong in? And what are some hurdles that you might be weak areas that you might struggle in your visa application with, or think that the visa officer might see as a red flag? So, for example, you might be a student who is a very good academic student. You have amazing grades and test scores, but you don't have very strong financial backing. So maybe you're from a family with a single parent who is giving all of their salary to contribute to your education, and they barely have enough to cover the cost of the I-20. They're just meeting the minimum amount, and they're able to sponsor you, but the visa officer might question your financial limitation. So that would be your highlight is your strong academic ability. Your hurdle or your weak area would be the financial ability to pay for your education in the US and have a long-term plan. So you want to be able to communicate to the visa officer what your financial plan would be in that case to fund your education. So you're getting funding from your family. You let them know if you're applying for any additional scholarships or bank loans, but anticipate the weak areas of your application and be ready to explain and defend yourself. Another example might be you are a student who has financial funding, you're well funded, but you're admitted to an intensive English program and you're nervous that that's going to be a weak area in your application because you're first studying in an English program. So be ready to communicate your intentions to the visa officer of how that English program is going to help you pursue your bachelor degree in your program of study. So having that foundation of English is going to set you up for success later on in your program. So be ready to address some of these challenges that you anticipate the visa officer seeing in your application. You also want to communicate your story. Visa officer, Alyssa and I have visited embassies around the world, and we have met with visa officers, and they have told us specifically they want to hear from students the genuine truth. They don't want a rehearsed answer, giving facts about the university and the ranking of the university and the program. They want to hear why are you studying in the United States at that specific university for that specific program? Tell your story, not what you think the visa officer wants to hear. That's what the visa officers want to hear is your story. So give specific examples, and these can be short, concise examples that tell a lot of information in one or two sentences. So I gave an example here. I'll read through it. This is just an example. I'm not saying this is the formula to get a visa, but think through how you could tell your story in a similar way. So you might say, I'm studying a bachelor's in biomedical sciences so I can pursue my master's and eventually work for a medical research laboratory in my home country to develop medical technology. And I'm studying at Minnesota State because it has a strong biomedical program with undergraduate research opportunities and small class sizes, so I can get hands-on experience with professors and focus on research. And I was awarded a scholarship, which helps make this program affordable. So in just a couple sentences, you've told your entire story of what you're studying, why you're studying, what you want to do with that, and why you chose that specific university. One example out of many. All of your examples in your stories are going to be unique to you. So don't feel like there's a one size that fits all or a specific formula to follow that's going to guarantee that visa acceptance. So practice thinking through what your story is, why you are studying in the US, why you deserve a visa for this program, and be ready to explain any challenges in your application that you might have to the visa officer. Alyssa, do you have anything to add to that?
I feel like you did such a good job and really covered everything. I think the only thing I would add to once again just back up with what Elizabeth is saying is a lot of students are like, what do I say to the visa officer to make them approve me? And I just want to say, like, I cannot tell you what to say. Elizabeth cannot tell you what to say because this needs to be you and your reason for coming here. Um, Elizabeth and I work with many students. We are working with over 2,500 students on fall to get them here. It is very surprising how, even when I don't know a student or see a student, I can tell if you wrote that email to me or not. Okay. I can tell if you used AI to help you write it, which is fine. No judgment from me. But I bring this up because there are common patterns to what we see students telling us. And it really helps us identify when you're telling us the truth or not. Okay. So if we can do this and we're only working, not only, I mean, 2,500 students is a lot. But when you compare that to some of your embassies, like your embassies in India are seeing like 2,000 students a day. Okay. The visa officers are seeing these same patterns. They're seeing these same things that students are saying. And so they can tell right away if you're telling your truth or if you're just regurgitating what an agent told you to say or what a friend told you to say to get your visa. And if they suspect that you're using a coached answer, it's probably not going to be a great experience for you because they're not feeling that you're giving them your genuine self. And therefore, they don't know what your actual intentions are. So I see a question in the Q&A actually about, from what angle should we answer a question of why studying in the US? Well, there shouldn't be an angle, is what I'm going to tell you. Okay. Because if you have an angle, it means you're not telling the full truth. And the embassy is going to realize that you're not telling the whole truth. So your angle should just be this is why I want to go to the US for my education. It is the best thing for me because schools in Nigeria don't even have the program that I want to study. Or, you know, the medical school that I'm studying at in Ethiopia has great instruction, but we don't have any labs. How am I supposed to learn anything to be a doctor? Okay. So just getting on my soapbox once more, because I love to do that, to back up my colleague Elizabeth, because really, this is your story, not someone else's, not what someone told you to say. That's not going to lead to a good outcome.
Yeah, and like Alyssa said, we don't know why you chose Minnesota State University. Only you know that. So we cannot answer that question for you. So think through what made you apply. Why did you choose this program?
And it's okay. You don't always have to sound like super academic, like I'm going to be a professor at these interviews. I mean, if you chose MSU because you're like, I just really love hockey and I know that a bunch of my friends are studying at Minnesota State, like that's actually okay to say. Like, oh, I found this school through my love of hockey and my friends told me that it's a really awesome place to study and I just think I'm going to be successful. Like they're going to appreciate that answer more than like they have state of the art facilities and world-class faculty. Because I hate to say this, but most universities, we say that because we all do. So, what's the real reason? I
I love
definitely did not choose my college based on the world-class facilities. I can tell you that.
same
I
here.
I chose mine because I thought it seemed like the Harry Potter Hogwarts castle and I was like this is cool. So literally people get it. We choose our colleges for all sorts of reasons. All right. So, ties to your home country. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on this because this is what most of you are being told is the reason for your denial. So, a reason for you to return to your home country after you complete your program in the US. So, those are what is your ties, or those are your ties. It could be your family and friends. Maybe you have a career opportunity. Like maybe you're a teacher right now and you're going to further your education. but you'll have that teaching job when you come back. Um, Maybe it's continuing education. So, you might be doing part of your education in the US, but that really to be the best doctor in Ethiopia, you're going to have to go home and like do your practicum in your home country. So, how do you demonstrate all of this? The first thing to remember, your visa officer will not ask you about your ties directly. So, because they're not saying specifically, hey, what's going to bring you back home? You kind of have to work this into every answer that you're getting or giving. Okay, so everything you answer should point to your intent to return home. And your ability to give concrete examples of your reason to return to your home country is going to be the best thing that you can do. All right. So before you go to your interview, start to identify your ties. Okay. So you don't want to be thinking about these on the fly. These are things that you want to have practiced telling someone before you go in. So you want to show your visa officer your plans to leave the US and come back to your home country. And you're going to give concrete and specific intentions of your study in the US and your plan to return to your home country. So, for example, maybe your reason to return is not super concrete, but I used this last time. So I apologize if you were in this webinar last time, but maybe you're really, really close to your grandparents. Okay. And I don't like to say this, but grandparents don't always live forever. So you could say, yes, I'm going to the US for 4 years to study my bachelor's degree because I really need this education, because then I need to come home and help my family take care of my grandparents and financially support them in my home country. Okay. So that's super simple, right? You're showing like, I love my family. I need to be there for my family. And that's why I'm coming home. Another way you could start to point back home is, again, let's say you're a teacher in your home country. I was recently in the Gambia and I met with some pretty awesome teachers there. And they said, I really want to come to the US and get my master's degree because I have my bachelor's degree, but I didn't necessarily have the facilities and research opportunities I wanted. So I want to come to the US, gain that experience so that I can come back to the Gambia and provide a better educational experience for the students that I teach. So you see how those answers, they're showing like I have goals in mind, and those goals are taking place in my home country. And that's really what's going to be most important. Because if you just say, like, I'm going to go to the US and study computer science because I've heard the programs there are better, but I know that there's tons of jobs here in Bangladesh, so I'll be back. Like, okay, yeah, you've said it, I guess, but it's not super convincing. You haven't really shown me that you know much about the computer science realm or what you want to do with it. You just kind of thrown out these buzzwords. So, practice beforehand. Think about all the things that could bring you home. It could be maybe you need to be at home because you have a single mother and she needs help taking care of your siblings. Maybe you have an auntie who's disabled and it's really important for you to be there to help with that. Maybe you just have some really awesome goals at home that you want to do. Maybe you have a startup that got off the ground and you're going to get the business skills to come back and make it super successful. Each one of you has your own story. Your story is worthy. It is good enough. You don't need an angle. You just need your story.
I love that. That was perfect.
Thank you.
All right. And I do again see the questions that are coming in the chat, so we will get to those at the end. So if you've been to any of our other visa prep sessions or webinars, you probably have seen this slide before. But you want to prepare questions to these themes or topics. So we're just going to run through these really, really quick so that as you're practicing again for this next visa interview, you have these questions and topics fresh in your mind and you're able to run through them. And we definitely recommend practicing answering these questions. Get comfortable talking about yourself, not so that you can just rehearse your answer and go in with a script and say everything perfectly, but just so you feel comfortable talking and feel confident in your answers and the story you have to tell. So, the first question, of course, is why do you want to study in the US and at this university? There are 4,500 universities in the US. Why did Minnesota State stand out to you the most? Like Alyssa said, it can be something like you follow sports and you love our hockey team, and the community here is super awesome. And you've seen our YouTube and Instagram videos and you want to be part of that. That's okay. Give that example. But you also want to tie in what are your academic goals in the United States? You chose a major. Why did you choose that major? And what do you hope to do with that major as for your professional goals? So what career or industry do you want to work in? Are there specific companies you want to work for? Maybe you've been a huge fan of an entrepreneur in your home country and your goal is to work for that startup when you come back. So you want a US degree to make you more competitive as an applicant. That is a great example. You also want to be prepared to answer how you will pay for your education in the US. And keep in mind, that's not just saying, my uncle is going to be my financial sponsor. Explain how your uncle has this money. What does your uncle do for work? Does he own a company? What does that company do? Visa officers want to make sure you have stable income from your sponsor that you will be able to support yourself. So give those examples. And then finally, ties to your home country. Think through what is your motivation to return after completing your education. So practice answering those questions and feeling confident and comfortable answering questions like that. And remember to tie everything back to your motivation to depart the US after your program. All right.
Yes, those are so important. Please, I know it seems silly to practice them and be like, hey, bestie, will you ask me these visa questions and I'll answer them in 10 seconds or less? Um, but really, it's going to be the best way forward. So, as silly as you feel, like, please, like, really practice them. It'll make things easier. Not to memorize, like Elizabeth said, but just so you feel comfortable. You don't want to add another layer of nervousness if you don't have to. All right, so we have given you some awesome hints and tricks, but we are definitely not the end all in preparing for your next visa interview. So we have a few helpful resources here. After this, I will send these links to the Telegram channel. So that's the one that you don't have friends on. It's just the information that's going out. I will send these links there. Number one, though, read through the US Department of State website. Okay, so we briefly went over some definitions at the beginning: immigrant versus non immigrant. What's an F1 visa compared to maybe a J1 visa? You definitely don't have to be an expert, but understanding what the F1 visa is truly being given to you for will only help you answer the questions, right? Because if you understand that, oh, I'm not supposed to be an immigrant, I'm not actually going to stay in the US according to this visa type, that will allow you to be like, oh, I'm not going to bring up the fact that my dream job is to work at Disney World as a Mickey Mouse mascot or, whatever. Okay. So very important to understand. The next thing that we recommend, if you can afford it, is ZF Visa Guides. So zfvisaguides.com. This is a newer company. I personally don't really have any experience with them. I do believe Elizabeth has had some experience though and had positive experiences with them. But it was a company that has recently been founded by a former visa officer. And they have a comprehensive F1 visa course that you can take. Now, of course, this comes with a price tag. It's $299. If you have that financial ability, though, and you have been denied once, this might be a really good way for you to learn some different strategies. Okay. The next company that we recommend, and both Elizabeth and I have attended webinars and different sessions with them, and we've really liked the content they've put out, and that's Argo Visa. This was also founded by past visa officers. They have free help. So they have a YouTube channel that has really awesome videos, some that go really in depth, and others that are more of kind of a basic overview. But we do recommend checking out those videos. It's at youtube.com/c/Argo Social. I will send this out. They also have a website with a pretty good blog as well. So I recommend that. And again, if you have the funding to do so, you could schedule a 30 to 60-minute one-on-one visa consultation with them. This does come with a price tag as well. So it's between $479 up to $789. So we are not like advertising. We are not saying that if you do, take these consultations, you will get a visa. But we know that this is really important to you all. And if you have the ability to, it's something you might want to check out. Lastly, we do have free visa prep sessions in our office. And so we train student workers who have all been through the visa process themselves, successful, some on their first interview, others on their second or third. So some have experience even on this part. But they're going to tell you what to expect at the visa interview. They will ask you questions and give you some basic feedback. Like, the feedback I hear most when I'm listening in on these is you have really good content, but you talked for a really long time. Can you make it more concise? So that's usually what they're helping you do, is kind of saying like, yeah, this is good, but how can we say this in 2 sentences? All right. So those are free, and you can schedule up to 3 of those without charge. We're always happy to help out. So again, after this, I will send these links out on the Telegram channel for you all to check out.
Awesome. I know we're getting close to kind of our end time. So I'm going to go through this super, super quick. If you have not rescheduled your visa interview and you are planning to, no, you will need to fill out another DS-160 application, and you will need to pay that $185 visa fee a second time. So each time you go for the interview, that fee needs to be paid. You do not need to repay the SEVIS I-901 fee. That is the $350 fee, as long as you're going for your second interview within 12 months. So if your visa or if your $350 fee was paid within the last 12 months, you are good. So you will have to fill out that application again. And once again, we have tips for filling out that DS-160. All of this information can be found on your international portal. So make sure you are logging into that international portal. This is the place where you were able to download your I-20. There's a ton of helpful information, including links to the recordings for all of our webinars, tips for filling out the DS-160, upcoming future webinars, and much more. So make sure you're checking out that information. The document list is also, I'm going to put all those up on the page. This list of what to bring with you to your visa interview, you probably know since you already likely did a visa interview already. But just as a reminder, make sure you have all of your documents printed and ready to go for your second visa interview. And if you needed to bring any updated documents, such as updated financial documents or academic transcripts or new test scores, make sure you have everything printed off and ready to go. We do have this complete list of documents also on your international portal, so you can find everything there. All right. I'm probably going to, do you think we should go through this one really quick?
I feel like we've gone through this one so many times.
Yeah.
Um, if you all like that, if you all need this information, that is not a judgment. But we do have this covered in some of our other recordings on YouTube. So I would recommend that you go back and watch one of those because I do see we're getting a bunch of questions and they're really good. So yeah, we can have time for that.
Perfect. That sounds great. One final reminder, if you are going for your second visa interview, you still need to arrive in Mankato by August 18th so that you can check in for orientation week, August 19th. We will not be able to provide extensions for students who are not able to get a visa in time to join us in August. So if you end up going for another visa interview, but you are delayed in getting to Mankato, you would need to defer your admission to January 2025. So keep in mind that August 18th deadline, or the August 19th deadline is firm. But we hope you're able to get that in time to join us. So.
Yeah, look at all these peer mentors. They're so excited. They are like actually our peer mentors are eagerly awaiting you and they have been trainings for orientation. So yes, with that, oh, I also, because I always say this, I understand that sometimes things don't work out and it is very disappointing when you need to defer because you can't get there by maybe August 19th. We get a lot of people who email me and they're like, hey, but I can get there by August 20th. Can I come then? I know that 1 or 2 days doesn't seem like a big deal, but really, when it comes to orientation, it is a really big deal because you have a lot of things that you need to take care of. And our academic departments only have so many classes. And so if you come after that, we're not going to be able to get you into classes. And that's why we make you defer. So, as always, all of our decisions and policies are made with student success in mind. And your success is ultimately the most important thing to us. And that's why we have these policies. So, I'm going to be like that mom that's always like, I know that it's fun and other parents like let their kids be on the iPad all the time, but that's not how our house is. So, sorry y'all. I'm strict.
For your benefit, though.
For
Truly.
your benefit and
Truly.
not unreasonably strict. So, all right. We have so many questions.
Yeah, we do. Look at
I'm
these.
looking good. So everyone, we will be going through, I have been answering some of them just in typing. So if we don't answer your question out loud, please check in the chat or the Q&A box because likely we've put a written answer in there for you. Oh, so I'm going to give you the first question if that's okay, Elizabeth.
Perfect. Yeah, go
Cool.
for it.
So Fitsum from Ethiopia, welcome Fitsum. They ask, if the interviewer asks me why this university, tell us more, what makes the university special or unique? What do you think we should answer?
Hopefully you learned a little bit from our presentation, but ultimately we can't answer this for you. Only you know why you chose Minnesota State University Mankato. And there's so much information on our website about our rankings and our great programs and state-of-the-art facilities and athletic teams and community and student organizations and research. All of that stuff are great characteristics of the university that does make it special and does make it unique. But there's so many good universities in the United States. So what I would encourage you to do is think about why Minnesota State University stood out to you. Maybe you had friends or family members who studied here and they had an amazing experience and they felt like it was a welcoming community where they were able to get good education and now they have great jobs. You can give that as your motivation of why you chose MSU from the reputation you heard from other people. So, like Alyssa said earlier, don't feel like it has to be this perfect academic answer that checks all the boxes about the rank and the special, unique characteristics of the university. That's not what the visa officer is looking for. They can go on the MSU website and find that information for themselves, but that does not tell them why you chose MSU. So, you need to do some reflecting. Think about why MSU stood out to you, what made you decide to apply, what you're hoping to gain from your academic program, and how that is going to benefit you maybe more than studying at a university in Ethiopia or another country. So ultimately, we can't give you that answer because you're the one who chose to apply. So think through what makes MSU special for you specifically.
Yeah, perfect. Also, everyone, if you see ears, my cat has decided to join me because I'm at home today. So I apologize, but this is my cat, Kitty. Her name is Kitty, and she's actually from Armenia. So she came here not on an F1 visa, only on a cat visa. But
That's what I was going to ask. What visa did she
yeah,
get?
not an F1, just just the cat visa. All right. The next question from Anonymous. So,
I love this.
yes, this is a great question. What about a lady that wants to study automotive engineering technology from Nigeria? What are the most likely questions concerning my major? Um, this could be from beyond Nigeria. This really could be for anybody. And, I don't think that they're really going to question your major choice. Women in the US, well, women definitely don't make up 50% of those in the automotive engineering technology program at our university anyway. There are women in the program, and it's really common. And I think for any women who are coming to the US to study something like automotive engineering technology or a field that is dominated by men, I think that's a really good thing to bring up. I have not been in every university around the world, obviously, nor have I been to every country. But what I have noticed in some of the countries I have visited is that women are still very much confined to the stereotypical careers that women tend to go into: nursing, social work, psychology, teaching. In the US, we have a lot of work to do as well, but we have a huge push to get women into some of these majors, especially STEM. We have clubs and organizations that are put into place to support you and to make you feel like you are truly welcome in that major. We try to have women faculty in like almost every one of our programs. And I'm fairly certain we have a woman faculty in our automotive engineering technology program. So I bring all of this up because if you are a woman trying to come to the US to study automotive engineering technology, biomedical sciences, what are computer science,
Electrical engineering.
electrical
Yeah.
engineering,
Mechanical
civil
engineering.
engineering,
Yeah.
like any engineering, I hate to say it, but we are still underrepresented. And the infrastructure that we have in place to support women in these career fields is often much more robust than what is maybe possible in your home country. So I don't really think that they're going to question, like, why are you studying this? But I think that you can use this as a great piece of your story about why the US is so important to your success. Because as a woman, you are going to get certain support networks, certain academic networks that are really going to push you forward in your career. that are not available sometimes in your home country. Okay. I don't want to say that like other places don't have this, and the US definitely has tons of work to do as well around gender equality, but that is one thing that I have personally noted on my travels. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add?
I think that was perfect. One thing I would just also consider is they might ask you what you want to do with that major because it might be more non-traditional for a woman to be working in automotive engineering in Nigeria. So give a specific example of what you want to do. So maybe there is an auto manufacturer that you want to work for, and you want to be part of the team that designs new vehicles or works for electric vehicle sustainability or something, whatever it might be. Talk about what your career goals are and how that program is going to help you be competitive in Nigeria and probably a male dominated industry.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you'll be famous one day for being like a leading woman in the industry, and we'll be like so proud of you and brag about you all the time. We do that a lot, actually.
We do that.
All right. Next question from Shedrock. Thank you for your questions. So please, what is your YouTube channel? I'm gonna send that out on the Telegram channel right after this. So if you need to find the Telegram channel, go to the KIC portal and it's there. It'll be ready for you. The next question is, what should one do if one fails one's visa interview? So I hope after this presentation, you do have a little bit more or a better grasp on what you should do next. Right now, I think if you still have questions, go back and review this video. And then Elizabeth, do you have any other like quick tips on that?
Yeah, I think tangibly the next step you would want to take is have that period of reflection of like what happened, what may have gone wrong, then make a plan for your next visa interview and work on that DS-160, get that next interview on the calendar so that you have a date to work towards. So after this session, once you've had a chance to review it, take that next step of getting your visa interview scheduled and then start preparing for the next interview date.
And then the last question from Shedrack, as regards to proof of funding, will telling the visa officer that aside from my sponsor in my home country, I was also given a graduate assistantship be an added advantage? Absolutely. You should 100% have that graduate assistantship on your I-20 as well. So even if you already have an I-20 and you're offered that GA or TA position after we've issued the I-20, we will do a financial update for that one specific reason, no other reason. We want that on your I-20. And then, yes, that usually is an added advantage, not a guarantee for sure. But I think in both of our experience, we've seen that significantly help.
Definitely.
All right. So I see here that I need to change my birth city on my I-20. How can I do that? I asked the department. They said it was totally fine. I need to change that as my passport. Okay, here's the thing. Our processor for I-20s has processed literally thousands upon thousands of I-20s. And so you can trust her expertise. She's very, like, I'm not kidding you. She is so good at her job. Yes, there are mistakes that sometimes happen, but if she's telling you that it's fine, it's fine. Something that we see a lot of times in passports for place of birth is a region is provided or the metro center is provided. But then when we ask you the city of birth in Teradata or your KIC portal, you give us the actual city or village. We want that. We want the actual city or village you were born in. And so that's likely why Pam is telling you it's fine, even if it doesn't match, because your passport is showing a region and not a city. So that is why. Um, yeah, I hope that helps explain. Sorry, my cat is just circling.
He wants
Um,
to be the center of attention, star of the show.
yeah. So I do see some of these questions on specific departments. I, and Elizabeth, you can overrule me. I'm not going to answer these because, you have chosen your department. You know what makes this department the one that you selected as the one that you want to be a part of. And so, the visa officer isn't going to look at our plan of study or look at what is different about our aviation school versus another. They are not looking at our programs and if our program is worthy of having students. We have a different agency that does that in the US. They're focusing on you and your intentions for your education. So I don't know, Elizabeth, are you okay with me overruling
Yeah,
some?
that's fine. That's fine. And I think just kind of reiterating, tell them why you chose to apply for the aviation program at MSU versus another aviation program at a different university. We're not the only ones with that program. So let them know what stood out to you the most and why you feel like that's going to be a good fit for your goals. And that goes for any program. Why is it a good fit for what you want to do? So look on the website. There's so much information for each major as far as like courses you're taking, the curriculum, the faculty. Look at all those things too, just to make sure you have the context of the program you're studying. That will be helpful.
Yes. Okay.
Own university. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to answer this next one, Elizabeth?
Sure, sure. The next one is does the embassy know about MNSU? Is it a well-known university? Because you learned from the Argo videos that they said to focus on more well-known universities. And if we applied there, there should be no more additional questions that you would get about that university in your question in your interview. I don't know if that's exactly what they intended by that answer because I've watched quite a few of their videos. I know in one video they said most visa officers, if they see a student who's going to university that is well known, it kind of speaks for itself. Like if you're getting into Harvard University, that kind of speaks for itself because of its reputation. They probably won't ask you context questions of like, where is Harvard? What's the weather like there? What programs do they have? So all of that to say it's okay if you're applying to a lesser known university. The visa officers just might ask more context questions to make sure you know the university you applied to, where it is. Um, I had a visa officer one time tell me that they had a student who said they got admitted to a community college in the state of Washington in Seattle. And they said, I'm so excited to study in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And they were denied because they didn't realize that the community college they went to was in a completely different state in the United States. So, all of that to say, lesser known universities are fine to apply to. But MSU, Minnesota State University, is a public university. It is known to visa officers, or at least the state university system is known to visa officers. So when they see that name, they may ask you questions, they might not. It's one of those that it could speak for itself, or they might just ask you questions to make sure to test your knowledge and make sure you know why you chose MSU.
Mhm.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Um, yeah, just on a kind of a different note, even from that, is kind of on the flip side, we hear a lot of students be like, well, I heard that people aren't getting visas because they're going to MSU. Um, and first I want to say they're not getting visas because they're coming here. We do have a good reputation everywhere. But sometimes, like, I'm gonna bring up Ethiopia because the rumor has been around forever And the rumor is that Minnesota State University Mankato has been blacklisted. That is absolutely not true. We have not been blacklisted. We are still welcoming so many students from Ethiopia, and we are still the #1 receiver of Ethiopian students. But what comes along with a well-known university like ours in Ethiopia, or anywhere, is past actions of students who received a visa for Minnesota State University Mankato or other universities in Minnesota, because they kind of look at us as a state, maybe have misused visas in the past. And I'm not saying they misused them, because that's not my job to judge. And I think that all of our students are doing what they need to be successful in life. But sometimes past actions do affect your visa decision. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you're coming from somewhere like Bangladesh, where in the last few years, not only at our university, there has been significant misuse of F1 visas. Students getting I-20s to different institutions, entering the United States, and disappearing, doing a no-show, like Elizabeth brought up earlier in the presentation. So those students that have done that are affecting your ability to get a visa now. And we are doing everything in our power to actually stop things like that from happening. So we're trying to help you, but sometimes given barriers that past students from your home country has done, that's what's affecting you. So I know that's on a totally different vein. Sometimes, people don't always like to talk about this, but one, we are not blacklisted anywhere. Every embassy we've gone to has said, they are issuing visas. We are getting visas from everywhere. But unfortunately, sometimes even when we are super well known, like in Ethiopia, it seems like people are being punished, but really they're not. It's just a background thing. I don't know. I'm just giving everyone some context as well about, like, sometimes visa denials are so out of everybody's control, even your own.
Yeah.
Elizabeth's like, that's a lot of info.
No. I was like, that's great. I feel like it's helpful to be transparent so people know what's happening. And
Yes.
along those lines too, everywhere there's been an increase in F1 visa applicants. And so naturally, when there's an increase in applicants, there's an increase in denials. So it might seem like there's more denials happening, but the trend has been, at least my understanding, the trend has been, it's been consistent. It's just you probably hear about it more now because there are, in general, more F1 visa applications.
Yep. Dylan has a great question, because this is one I've actually heard a few times. Elizabeth, I would love for you to answer it so I can hear what you have to say. I want to learn from you too.
Uh-huh.
But Dylan says, if I am asked to state how many schools I applied for, honestly, I only applied to MSU. Will that seem like a red flag to the visa officer?
This is always tricky. The short answer is yes, it can seem like a black flag, or a red flag, because visa officers, they're not punishing you for just applying to one university, but what they're hoping to see is that you had multiple considerations. So trying to think of the appropriate way to say this. They could view it as you're just putting all of your eggs in one basket, hoping to get a visa to study at one institution, and you didn't look at other universities. So you may not have been as intentional in your choice of why you picked that specific university, versus if you applied to 3, 4, 5 other universities, you might have good reasons for those institutions. It shows you have done your due diligence to find a university that's the best fit for you. So this does not mean it's an automatic denial. They might not even ask you this question, but be prepared to answer it. and tell them honestly, like I applied to MSU, I learned about this university and I knew that was the best fit for me. So I didn't feel like I needed to apply to any other institutions and I got accepted. So I didn't want to go around applying to many universities, using that time, paying additional application fees, going through that process of applying when I knew this was the best fit for me. So just answer that honestly and let them know why you only applied to MSU because you probably have a really good reason of why this was the only place you submitted an application for. So it could be seen as a red flag, but it's all about how you use that opportunity to pivot and show them why MSU is the best fit for you. Do you have
Yeah.
anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. That's what I always say too. I don't really think that the visa officers care how many places you applied to. What they do care about is that you've done your due diligence and they know you're applying to the correct place. And when I
Yeah.
say the correct place, the place that will be the best fit for you. Okay. Um, I think the only time that this could pose a problem for you, which is essentially what Elizabeth said. But I have heard from students who have said, well, the visa officer said, well, why Minnesota State University, Mankato? And they've answered with, they were the first ones to accept me, or they were the first ones to get me my I-20. And so that answer leads the visa officer to say, oh, yeah, this is just like out of convenience and like you just want to come to the US. So in that case, yeah, it would be a red flag. Um, but yeah, like Elizabeth said, as long as you're showing like I've done my due diligence and I just know this is the place for me, all good.
Yeah, that's fine. A lot of students in the US apply to one university because that's where they want to go and they don't want to consider other places. That's fine.
Mhm. And I mean, you could also be like, hey, I'm doing a smart thing here because I saved money because I didn't apply to 400 places. I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating. But like application fees add up, things add up. So you can show, like, hey, I did this because I was being fiscally responsible.
They totally do. I think when I applied to universities, I applied to 9, and that ended up being like over $500 in application fees. That's crazy.
Yep. All right. Okay, so I see. We'll go with this next one. So, what's the best answer to give when you're asked about your tuition fee payment? And I should say, just because of time, we'll answer these 3 questions that are here. And if you do have any other questions, you can email them to us and we'll get back to you. Um, but what's the best answer to give when you're asked about your tuition fee payment? I think, and Elizabeth, please feel free to step in. But I think just being honest is really important. And when I say being honest, it means thinking about this beforehand and really coming up with a plan. So, this is the tuition fee. I have worked with my sponsor to ensure that they can cover my tuition fee for the next 4 years. I've also considered cost of living and other areas, and I have a plan for that. Um, I think the things that you want to avoid when talking about tuition fee payments are I plan on working on campus to pay my tuition. That's a big red flag. Or I plan on working to pay my tuition. Just anything around working and paying your tuition is usually not a good thing to say because they want to make sure that if you come to the United States, and even if you do not have an on campus job or get an internship, that you are still going to be able to pay your bills. So I think as long as you're honest, you're not bringing up like working along with study to pay, that's fine.
And one quick note too, many universities require like a deposit payment or an enrollment deposit payment. So MSU does not require any student to provide a prepayment for their tuition or enrollment. So if you get asked any questions along those lines of like, hey, have you made your deposit for your tuition and fee payment? You can answer honestly and say, no, it's not required for this university. But look, I have these financial documents that show I can clearly afford the tuition and the cost of living. So if they ask some type of question like that, use it as an opportunity to pivot back to your financial sponsor.
Yeah, good call. Pivot, pivot, pivot.
Pivot.
One of Friends, we talked about this last time, but if you're a Friends fan, the 90s sitcom, just think pivot. I always pivot back to how is it going to bring me back home? All right, Fitzum, I see your question on the teaching and learning process. So I'm going to assume you're asking how to speak about the teaching and learning process here at MSU. I think it's really important for you to talk about why you think this teaching location is the best place for you. But one really important distinction about Minnesota State University, Mankato, versus maybe the University of Minnesota or even a Harvard a university is we are a teaching institution. So we have all of our curriculum and our faculty is specifically designed to make sure that it is teaching you what you need to enter the workforce or achieve your goals post graduation. So, because we're a teaching institution, the faculty, their number one thing is being your teacher, being in the classroom, having office hours, creating experiences for you. Research comes secondary. So that's one thing that does distinguish us from places like the University of Minnesota or even Harvard. And those are amazing schools, do not get me wrong, but their faculty focus on research and teaching comes secondary. At Minnesota State University, teaching comes first and research and all other responsibilities come secondary. You do get awesome research opportunities here, though. I just want to say that.
Super quick, if you're cool with it. I'm just going to show, because we've had so many questions about this, I'm going to share the university website and show you where you can find more information about your specific program. So if you're on the home page here and you go to academics, we have lots of different tabs here, but I would recommend going to the academic catalog. And this is where you can find every single major, minor, and certificate program at the university. And if you click into this, it's going to show more specific information about that program. So I'm going to choose the automotive engineering technology program because we had that question earlier. And this gives you a wonderful summary of what's required for courses that you need to take to graduate from this program, how many credits are in this program, the number of semesters to complete this program. So you can find all of that information here. And then they also have different course policies and specific details. And if you really want to, you can go even further into the website or the department page for your program and find out more about faculty and scholarships and student clubs and organizations. So I'll maybe we'll share this in like the Telegram
Yeah.
group too. So if you want to find specific information, that's a great place to start. So just wanted to show that because I know we were getting a lot of program specific questions.
Yes. Yes. Go take a look at those, everyone. It's just good for your knowledge to have. All right. Last question. I love this. It says, please help Nigerians. We're not really good and fluent in English. First of all, it's not only Nigeria. I think it's everywhere because we have an accent. Our accent is totally different than what you're used to. It's okay. My advice, the interview will be in English. And what I will say is it's okay to ask them to repeat things. So, I mean, don't ask like 7 times, but really, if they ask you a question, you might not answer for a million reasons. It could be your fluency, but also you're going to be nervous. You're going to be just kind of like overwhelmed. There's going to be a lot of things going on. And so there's a lot of reasons that you may not understand a question. So I always feel confident and okay saying, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat the question? Um, and then, you try your best. Oh, someone's at my door. You try your best. They'll wait. You'll try your best. You will just answer what you can. And, I think that's all you can do, right? Elizabeth, I'm not sure if you have any other uh, hints or
Practice,
tips. Yeah,
practice answering what you want to say in your interview. Um, and it's not that you're not fluent in English. It's just there's so many different accents worldwide, and it gets confusing. American English is its very own thing. If we go
yeah,
to the UK, I mean, I have to ask people to repeat things because the accent is just so different, even though we're speaking the same language. It would be the same in Nigeria. If I go to Nigeria, I probably will have to ask and say, sorry, can you repeat that? Even though we're all speaking English, accents make a big difference. So
yeah.
feel confident that your English ability is just fine. Practice your answers so you feel confident talking about yourself.
Yeah. And I want to say, even if you understand us perfectly, you might get a visa officer from Boston who has like a super thick Boston accent. And, sometimes even we're like, what are you talking about? Because they don't say their R's. We like in the Midwest, we're like very, very strong R's, but in Boston, they don't use them. But
Non-existent.
not existed. They write them though. But anyway, Kasali, I think Elizabeth and I are both just trying to say we have confidence in you. You do speak English. We know you do. So go in, be confident, and it's okay if you don't understand. Just say, can you please repeat? Grace, we're super happy that you found this helpful. And everyone else who came today, we hope that you also found it helpful. Um, This is going to be the final session like this one, but we will have another visa, just a standard visa prep session in July. But we do have a lot of other sessions coming up. So if you are interested in travel information, if you're an undergraduate student hoping to find out more about registration, orientation, all of those things, we have webinars on, and they are also all recorded and presented live on YouTube. So, um, with that, thank you for coming. I do have items I will be sending out on Telegram to everyone on the channel, or someone from our office will today. Otherwise, thanks so much for coming. And Elizabeth, do you have any final words?
Thank you all. I think this is hopefully a helpful session for you. Go back, watch the recording, and just practice, practice, practice. That is going to make a big difference. So take the tips we said, put those into practice, and we hope you're successful on this next interview.
Yes, good luck. Keep us informed, and we are rooting for you all. So we're very excited when we hear about visa approvals. So with that, enjoy your evening or afternoon wherever you're at, and we will see you all in August, hopefully.